Fellow travelers, join us on a journey into dissonance, a sense-making sojourn through humanist nightmare fuel. If you are receiving this transmission, then you too are part of the resistance.
Hey travelers, house or home? To be sure, these words evoke different meanings for each of us. It's no different among our houseless communities. As each life is different, so too is each narrative. In today's stream, Dr. Siraj and I share narratives of some people affected by houselessness, whether by choice or by circumstance. Should these humans be lumped together and labeled as drug-abusing criminals? Should they serve as a punchline in a conservative report? Or can we lean in closer and recognize our own story in those of our fellow humans? You be the judge as we listen in now.
Not like a fun, like, I live on a boat, like a boat with no amenities and no, like, she was like living there basically, like, she was like, I was dying. Like, I was just like, I needed to die for 3 months. Like, it's crazy, but like her story just, man, there were so many times I just cried because she just spoke to exactly ways I felt, the ways that I've connected to other people about like what they're feeling. And I kind of, I don't know, just pulled me back in a way that just I didn't feel like out of place or like have like imposter syndrome, like, you know, or anything like that. I just felt like, yeah, that's right. I was right to like that. There is a reason that I'm connecting, and it's not just because of the fact that I've been through it, but I know that there's some deeper stuff like going on. I know it, I feel it, I'm experiencing it, and her story was validation too. It was completely different from mine, like completely different, but I totally got it.
So that was interesting, that one part about the lady there saying, essentially, I just want to check out,
Yeah.
right? Like, we've seen that in different places. And that's been kind of a delicate inquiry relative to what we are approaching with the condition of what we're going to call, for the purposes of our discussion, houselessness. But most people refer to this as homelessness.
Right.
But we'll explore some ideas here about what the differences between homelessness and houselessness are, why we refer to what we're talking about as houselessness, and why we're seeking to discuss several different dimensions of this topic, because there's a lot of intersectionality amongst those things, right? Like the idea of being a person who has a family, who, you know, comes to a particular moment of houselessness, or someone who's been chronically houseless for a long period of time. You know, so there's different types of experience. And then there's experiences of certain people who seek a particular path that may not necessarily result in being entirely houseless, but there may be several steps along that way, because they are checking out, they're rejecting the social confines that they've come up in, what society, what culture, what even the institutional spaces within their community have said to them, this is what you're supposed to be, and they just don't want that. And they, perhaps like this woman, and perhaps in ways that are familiar to you, Nadine, like there's a sense of checking out, and it may be conscious, it may be below the conscious state, it may be unconscious, right? So I don't know, having said all that, do you resonate with this idea of, I mean, have there been aspects of your experience of houselessness that have felt like a rejection of something, a moving away from something?
Yeah, definitely. A movement away from the judgment that was like really stifling my life. You know, and that was a thing that was coming from external, but also internal. And I needed to pull away to be able to give myself a second to like breathe some fresh air and not constantly be condemned for choices that I've made, and for, you know, the way I do things, which is not always inside certain parameters. But like I had to get away from that externally, but also like internally, you know what I mean? And I needed a break. And that break, it wasn't like it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like I planned like, all right, I'm just gonna sit here and find, you know, this thing that I'm looking for. It was definitely a lot more, there were a lot more steps to it than that. But like what I found, and I think I really caused me to linger, you know, is I found a better, or I found a real community, you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't perfect, definitely. It wasn't fully, you know, like fully functional. You know, there were things that we all needed, but like that, our need for things to be different, honestly, because all of us had different needs, but like our need brought us together. And when someone would see another person in their low moment of need, or even, it doesn't have to be like you're at the lowest point, but like they would see that you need something, and if it was possible, they'd either advise you, or like someone would share with what they had. And that's the type of thing that you don't often find in mainstream society. It's usually the judgment and the, you know, get your crap together, man, like what's wrong with you type thing. Or like, or even the help a lot of times is meant to like, okay, let's hurry up and like get to this point of like, you stand on your own so I can like get out of here. And I found people that all types of different people, but like people that were not trying to hurry up and get me out of their lives, and you know what I mean, and just we still speak. Like that's saying a lot, because I've lost friends on this journey, you know, and family on this journey. And so to find that sense of community, a truer sense of community that I've experienced in mainstream society, that was a healing experience for me, actually. And I didn't find that opportunity a lot in, you know, go to work, take the kids to school, go to work, come home, clean the house, cook, get the kids, go to sleep, do it all over again. I wasn't able to even have a moment to consider what I was missing, you know, like deeper than just like the basic needs.
Yeah. This is an itch that I've been wanting to scratch for a long time, right? This idea of what a lot of people in, you know, from conservative spaces, more conservative thinking spaces, politically, culturally, you know, they may perceive what is happening in cities across the US and other spaces internationally, usually in very, you know, much more city spaces. There is this idea that it's all going to shit, right? It's in a very classist, racist, and kind of othering way. It's made into very like, it's like a zombie apocalypse out here, and it's like, just, you see these people just walking up and down the streets, we can't even go to a store and get bagels. And it's like, it's certainly here in Gainesville, Florida, in other spaces that people may also say, because Gainesville's that kind of space, in places that are much more progressive and liberal minded, you see homelessness, as it's referred to more commonly. And yet, if you make that distinction between the words houseless and homeless, you may see houselessness, but you see gatherings of individuals in home communities that are often being threatened, right? Like, so let's see if we can bring this up over here. Yeah, so this is one of our communities, right? This is from our independent Florida Alligator. Folks, we have a really good newspaper here, right? I mean, this is the independent one. We have a New York Times subsidiary, which is the Gainesville Sun, and it does what it does, but it's really cool to have our own independent space. Future is uncertain. This is from about a year ago, just a few months ago. Future uncertain for Gainesville South Main Street homeless encampment. Homeless encampment, right? But it could also, like, this place, right?
Yeah.
It says encampment residents, officials, and advocates are concerned about a potential UF development displacing the community, right? So
I'm so sorry. We worried about that now?
Yeah, UF development, folks, is the University of Florida. So that's it's a place I've worked. I worked there for a long time. I worked with UF Health, which was the healthcare system, the hospital system that UF also owns and runs and is partnered in. But that's not what we're talking about here. I mean, UF is a place like any other. There's a lot of amazing things that come out of UF, and then there's a lot of very seemingly non-empathetic, like discompassionate actions that are taken in terms of the community around UF, right? So this may be perceived, and is likely perceived by a lot of people, as one of those things, but we're talking about it in a different way right now. We're not talking about the big system and what's happening to the people on the ground. We're talking about this dude, who is Robert Thomas, who's being pictured here in this article. And Nadine, you know this guy.
Yeah.
And you know the dude over here.
Yes.
That's riding around on his bike and is peeking in saying, man, what's Robert doing over here? Who's he talking to? Who's taking his picture? Right? And you know the woman that once occupied this tent right here.
Yeah.
Right? So here's a weird question. Like, this area, which is like behind this area, is the historical neighborhood of Porters, right? Like, Porters is out that way, and this way is, the bus station's up that way, I think, and behind it this way is, our other neighborhoods. My son does capoeira in a small space that's it's in a neighborhood, it's on a corner. It probably used to be a store, and now it's that thing, and there's houses around there. So we got neighborhoods surrounding it. But Nadine, is this a neighborhood? Do we think, is this a neighborhood?
It is not anymore, because it's, it doesn't exist anymore as far as that.
Right. So before we get to that, is that a neighborhood? And did you once live in that neighborhood? Or did you live
It-
near that neighborhood? Did you know people in that neighborhood?
I passed through the neighborhood every morning. I stopped at the same, you know, and still go, but like to the same place where we get breakfast, the shelter that serves breakfast, you know, there. And I spoke to everyone, and like, first when I first started, you know, doing it, like everyone didn't necessarily know me, who I was, and just like, who's this person that is giving us eye contact and speaking to us like we're human beings. And everyone, people started to embrace me and like recognize me and speak to me in other places. And you know, like we just talked, like I talked to people, you know, and I learned so much. And yes, it was a community. It is a community. It is a neighborhood. You know, you see neighbors going through it. You see neighbors getting together and supporting each other much, much, much more. Like if you really are involved in it. So yes, absolutely, 1,000% a community.
So it's a neighborhood. It's a community. For you, these experiences, even when you were going, so the shelter you're referring to is St. Francis House, which is across the street from where this community used to be, but this
Yes.
community was disbanded. It was, it was what? It was pushed out, right? So what happened there?
There are programs that, well, I guess the city wanted to move everyone, and like, you know, there's been a lot of complaining and like a lot of like, what are we gonna do about this? And so I know in the past about I know, right? About people living in the streets, like, but you know,
But this was in a park that's otherwise generally unoccupied.
This is in the fire station. This was in the fire station, yeah. That was shut down because they built a whole new one, a nice bigger one next door.
And
so
the place where this generally was, there's a park across the street.
Yeah.
There's St. Francis House diagonally across. Then there's the fire station. There was a whole village there.
Yeah.
Right. And yes, it looked terrible because, you know, I mean, honestly, Nadine, the curb appeal there just was not, you know, top notch for.
Well, I don't know. Me seeing someone lay in front of a sign that says "Know Your Rights."
Yeah, well, there was also a place where we frequent that there is the Civic Media Center, right?
Yeah.
And that is what you're referring to there as an excellent Know Your
Rights
history. Know Your Rights is on the other side. Know Your History is here. Yeah. And so the fire station was this way.
Yeah.
The where Robert is looking at in the other picture is across the street from this place. And this is where folks were dwelling. And I was saying it mockingly and cynically that, you know, it just didn't have curb appeal.
Yeah.
But every place doesn't look like an upper middle class, like posh neighborhood that, you know, everybody's like, oh, Janice, did you get the new Buick Enclave this year? You know, like, I mean, sure, that those places exist. People occupy those spaces. People are happy there, and they're excited to go to Home Depot on the weekend after a hard week of work to look at the backsplash tiles for their kitchen that they want to put in as their cool, loving couples DIY project. And that's awesome. I'm super happy for that. But other people exist also, and they exist in different ways, and they have different priorities. And those priorities that perhaps are very alien to the people who live with the new kitchen backsplashes, because their priorities are which tile design, and this person's priority is just survival, is sleep, is where do I get food? But if they take St. Francis House away, how will I eat? You know, all of those types of things. And so let's just, for the sake of this particular conversation, as we invite others to listen in to this and to engage in this, let's think about this not as a problem, but just as a condition of our human existence. So in that way, what we're saying, we can't otherize it and just say, ugh, this problem, this messy thing. No, what if we think about it as, but in Gainesville, we're all human beings. This group of human beings lives this way, this group lives this way, this group lives this way, this group lives that way. And if there are drastic disparities, even in one community, across that particular continuum, in terms of how people live, then that is a shared condition of humanity that we are all existing with. And so we have to, in order to reflect on it, we have to reflect on all of it. Gainesville is a city. People on one side of Gainesville can't ignore people on the other side of Gainesville. We're all Gainesville. And in case anybody wants to dispute that, and it's likely some variation on this theme is likely the case in any community any of you come from, but in this community, the University of Florida is an institution that runs like a corporation, but has the benefit of being a state land grant university, which receives all sorts of special consideration by the city, such as tax exemption, property tax exemption. And so everybody else in Gainesville and Alachua County, the county we're a part of, pays for their taxes. Like, I pay for this house, these taxes are higher than they should be. We have some of the highest taxes in the state in terms of property taxes. And that's because this big gazonging massive organization, UF and UF Health, doesn't kind of pay its fair share, right? So we're in that position. And I'm sure there's lots of very big specifics about how that does and doesn't work. And there are a lot of people who may know about that kind of stuff, you know, in terms of property taxation and local governance. And, you know, when you have big institutions like UF and blah, 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 and it brings so much, I mean, it brings jobs into the community, right? And it's funny how those jobs are also separated by communities. There are some communities that are the higher end spaces where people live that we were mentioning, and they're the people who come to UF in positions of management and faculty positions. And I was one of those people for some time. And then there are other people from other communities who also benefit from jobs at UF, but they happen to be the people who are called buildings and grounds. Buildings and grounds means people who go clean the buildings and clean the grounds and maintain those spaces. And the two groups do not cross over very much, right? So in terms of who those people are, what they look like, the color of their skin, and where they live and how they live. So let's just be generally understanding that we're all in bed together here. So this is an issue of our human condition. And that's why we're exploring all of these ideas. Like this individual who's in front of CMC right now, laying on the ground in this picture, may not have had a choice to be where he is. And there's a lot of different reasons that likely go into that. Or more interestingly, may not have liked or may have outright rejected the choices he was given. So would you say, Nadine, that those two realities are both realities you're familiar with? The may not have had a choice based on the conditions of your existence leading to a certain point, to, let's say, you weren't where this guy was, but you were at a time occupying the shelter up the road and still benefit from the nourishment and the nutrition for your family that it provides, right? So there's the idea of not having the choice of being there, but then there's also this idea of rejecting, like, if not this, then you got to do this. And it's just those two things. Like, it's not, you could be what you want to be and live in color, but most people are gonna be
You're
too young
giving
to
yourself
understand.
away. I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I know
That's
what you're
this.
talking about though.
Yeah. You can be what you wanna be and live in color. And live in color.
You see all the cast members dancing.
I know. Which was huge, folks. That's the Wayans family, and you unfortunately don't know the older Wayans siblings. You probably know Marlon Wayans, which is the guy who's in all the he's in some really funny movies though. There's the haunted house movies. They're spoofs, they're parodies. He does a lot of parody work, and those movies though are, I mean, there's a lot of cringe, but it's the good kind of cringe. But anyway, so yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk a little bit more, but let's relate to this one, because there's this amazing YouTube channel, folks, right? There's many amazing YouTube channels. One that we're going to really highlight today is what Nadine mentioned before, Invisible People, right? So give me a sec here. I just want to, okay, let's just freeze her. And let's go check out Invisible People real quick. Okay, amazing. Look at this. Look at this incredible site, right? Huge subscription base. I count myself privileged to be amongst that subscription base.
Me too.
Helping people in LA, making house calls in Venice Beach. That's an interesting, I like that. House calls used to be the old, the doctor made the house call when we were sick. And now they're actually doing this now, but it's in Venice Beach. We want to talk about this guy here too. The homeless man produces podcast with a cell phone, but there's so much more to that. But what was incredible was this young lady. We recognize where this is, right? We know this whole space. That's Bodidley Square. Yeah. That's not the library. The library is in the next block. That's the court. The courthouse. Right? The family court. We do most of our work this way in the criminal courthouse. Lots of crossover amongst people there. That's an interesting concept, but let's listen to what she has to say, because young homeless woman keeps bouncing from place to place, but she's finally ending up on the streets of Gainesville, Florida, sleeping outside of a homeless shelter. Let's see what she has to say.
Chantel, you're out here homeless in Gainesville. Tell me about it.
Well, for me, it started 2 years ago after I had been recently discharged from the Army. It wasn't.
We clap. Whenever I've been on an airplane for the past 10 years, we clap for our veterans. Service. Now, move your ass on. Go deal with, if you have PTSD, if you have other issues, if you just don't know how to function in society after you've spent a life breaking down buildings and homes of other people and then killing them, or arresting them, or whatever, or having bombs blow up in your face and do all that. But if you can't handle yourself, you can exist out on the street. Veterans. We love our veterans.
I was glad that I was going to try to serve my country, but they didn't see me as fit. But I went to try and live with my aunt. Mom finds out. I was going to surprise her when I got home. Nope. She kicks me out of the house. So I end up staying with my aunt and them for half a year. A family friend takes me in. A year and a half later, well, 6 months, we lose the house from a reverse mortgage. Family friend helps out for a year and a half. They end up kicking me. End up on the street for about 2 weeks or so. Another friend takes me in for 6 months, and it's just traveling from Florida to Dallas to back. It's just, the struggle is real. They don't realize it at first, like one of my friends said.
So let's mention a couple of things. One, nearly, if you go on Fox News or you go on nearly any conservative media platform, you will experience commercials, advertisements for reverse mortgages, right? They're all over the place, but they're all over the place in those places. There's a lot of predatory housing stuff that occurs, and it's like this. It's this idea of losing the family home. And when I say family home, because this happened to one of our clients, right? He essentially had to, I mean, it was amazing that we were able to be as you know, or gain as much momentum as we did in working with this client to help him get no incarceration time, but be in a probation space. And we worked with him as community advocates and other, you know, kind of in paraprofessional spaces with probation, like peer development that you did, like developmental counseling that I worked with him with. And yet the biggest problem for him was the conditions of where he lived, right? And unfortunately, those conditions were such that, you know, they existed in his family home. He occupied that home. There's sisters and nephews, his cousins, and there were a lot of people who lived in this particular space, which meant that there were many different influences entering into that space. You had people from different age groups going through different things, making possibly the same mistakes he made, but they're mistakes to make because they're all 19, you know, and so that was happening. And yet that home was the core base for all those people. And in a similar kerfuffle, right, in terms of housing and predatory lending and not being able to, you know, deal in a way that is very common to a lot of people, that house was taken and those people were dispersed. And our particular client, our individual, ended up in some profoundly more negative spaces, which led to issues that then, you know, meant violations of probation, right? So this is how these things just kind of snowball. They don't all happen at once. It's like she's talking about, Crystal's talking about, they happen. There was this thing. The first thing is the military saw me as unfit. That's all she said. They didn't see me as fit, you know, and I was like, okay. So that was her job, folks. Like, she wasn't unemployed. That was her job. Whatever happened, she was rejected from that job, right? That was step one. Then there's a tradition or a culture or a history of emotional familial abuse, whatever the case is, that likely led to the issue between her mom and her. And then she went to live with her other family, and then that family home was taken away, and now she's here. And she's on the road between Florida and Texas and back to Florida. Believe me, I haven't gone as far as Texas, but I've gone as far as Louisiana and had, you know, different things to do along the way, and back and forth, New Orleans, you know, for meetings and conferences. That is not a kind road, that I-10 corridor. That's not a kind road to travel. It's not a great You know, like I say that in on one level, but I say that in terms of all the levels at which people may have to traverse that road, such as her. And
Yeah.
it's not a kind road if you don't have your own means. So let's keep going and seeing what she says.
We can dress normal, we can act normal, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask. If you see a person sitting on the sidewalk, they could be homeless even though they dress normal. Just ask them, are they okay, or just something to make their day.
I mean, treat them as a human, treat them as a person.
Yeah, I mean, we're all humans. Just because they don't have a home doesn't make them any less different.
Excellent. Let's pause on that and just look at one other thing from our community, right? This thing we were looking at, this person that Crystal is talking about, treat him like a human being. Scroll, scroll, scroll. To control Gainesville's downtown homeless during the pandemic, police turned to a private security contractor.
What the fuck does that even mean? Like, are you hiring snipers? Like, what the hell?
Oh my God.
It's just
In early 2020, business owners and some downtown residents brought concerns to the city about what they saw as an increase in the homeless population in downtown, according to public records. One complaint bemoaned the state of Lynch Park, which is located directly across the street from the old Fire Station 1. I found trash, and drug garbage lying on the ground inside the fence, the complaint reads. Now it's just a homeless camp. Due in part to these complaints, the short-staffed Gainesville PD turned to a private security contractor named Excelsior Defense. Excelsior Defense to conduct to conduct early morning patrols and compel the downtown homeless to move.
To move along? Move it along. Nothing to see here. Like, what?
Legal advocates and some camp residents say systemic housing issues, the seizure of homeless people's belongings by the city, and the private security patrols all contributed to the creation of a homeless encampment at the old fire station. Look at this.
Yep.
The police department in Gainesville, Florida, KKK riding a horse. And with the little
Look at that!
cops supported hate groups in Gainesville, Florida. Wow.
Did it stop? Look at that. Did it stop? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Right there.
I am prideless, voiceless, hated, abused, accused, broken, powerless. That's how we did it in a liberal city, folks. In a liberal city. In a liberal city.
And it's got to be stressful going from living situation to living situation and just not knowing. You could be rolled up at any second.
It does. It is stressful. They don't think the struggle's real when it is. Trying to find a place for a bed, and when you do find a place, always first come, first serve. Grace Marketplace is where I stay. Yes, there's beds. However, it's a first come, first serve. They need help there. They need more beds. They need to open more of the buildings there. Just a little bit of funding, donations. We have food. However, we don't have the nutrition we need. We need more donations of food.
But good food.
Yeah.
There's plenty of food, just high carbs.
High carbs. Yeah, we need to have a more balanced diet, because otherwise we've got people with high blood pressure or something like that they don't take into consideration.
And folks, from a hospital admin perspective, like I worked in spaces where indigent populations, the care of individuals that have no access to care ultimately for all the people who are wearing the like nice, you know, $2,000 suits, this consideration is that it costs more to care for human beings when their care needs are at a critical place, and to care for them in emergency spaces and in under emergency circumstances, rather than ongoing care, preventative care, not getting to a point where they have incredibly difficult, complex comorbidities and problems to have to deal with. And to do that, beginning with the basis of just nutrition, right? Um, isn't there something, what is there a thing, let me just say, let me just type in this term here. Oh, I type in Universal, and down here in Florida, folks, it's Universal Studios, Florida. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for.
Oh,
this,
goodness. Oh, snap.
Right? I'm looking for. Universal Basic Income is a socio-political financial transfer policy proposal in which all citizens of a given population regularly receive a legally stipulated and equal financial grant paid by the government without a means test. A means is basically needs assessment, or how means essentially ultimately means is how are we going to give this to you and how are you going to return that value? Right? But this is without that. A basic income can be implemented nationally, regionally, or locally. Folks, we've already had this kind of thing occurring in terms of spaces such as the child tax credit, you know, or issues such as the child tax credit that has been helping people out. The you know, loans made to small businesses, those are loans, but the idea of what was given to individuals in small businesses to just make it through the COVID space. There has also been the idea of checks that we receive in the mail from the United States Department of Treasury to help us get through times when the pandemic prevented many of us from engaging in work to sustain livelihood. But folks, this has happened in other spaces too. There's been bailouts of large institutional spaces like car industry, like other business spaces. The government can engage in such practice in ways that are ultimately, they may be heavy on the front end or heavier on the front end, but ultimately result in cost reduction socially overall, right? Like that can happen. It's incredibly complex. There's plenty of pros and cons that go into that. But as a suggestion, if we have Crystal here saying that there are issues that she sees on the ground that need to be addressed, that are issues that are based in very personal basic needs like housing, food security, healthcare, and then as we move further, we can look to education, adult community-based education, to help individuals pursue what it is that they may want to pursue in a context that is created or co-created by them, between them and somebody else who may be or a community agency that is working with that individual to co-create a life, to co-create an existence. That can work, but we don't necessarily see a value in that. We see that as handouts. We see that as enabling. We see that as, oh, if you just give lazy people money, they're just going to be lazy people with money. And there is enough of a discourse that exists in multiple spaces but spaces very much in the spaces that myself and Nadine occupy in the social sciences and social services that argue that that is not the case. That is not the case in terms of just throwing money at people. In fact, the problem right now with a lot of partners that we may work with locally, but also on national levels, the solution to many of these kinds of social ailments that we are perceiving, such as houselessness, the answer is just to throw money. And we're not saying throw money, we're saying specifically basic needs being met. If Crystal's basic needs were met, look at her eyes. Her eyes speak of a yearning for possibility, for opportunity, for anything that is a solution, is a resolution to this miserable condition in which she is existing with other people who also perceive that miserable condition as just, this is what we got, right?
Yeah.
This dude does not want to live and be considered all these things, right? Just basic, not move along, because you can't move along, there's nowhere else to go. It's just basic needs. That's what we're talking about at this particular point. So let's see, Nadine, what other voices may have to say, right?
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. We want to begin.
Here we go. Let's see what Tucker has to say, who's representative of a lot of voices in this nation, but it's kind of chicken or the egg, right? Is it people like him that craft this message and put it out there like a mind virus to just infect the minds of people against other human beings? Or is it perhaps that Tucker's voice reflects and represents the voices of people that already exist? So I don't know. Let's just see.
And by noting something obvious, because this is the obvious show. If you live in the United States, you may have noticed that many of our public spaces have become permanent homeless encampments. You see trash-filled tents blotting out what were once green and tidy public parks. You step over vagrants drooling unconscious on the steps of train stations on the way to work. You watch as junkies smoke meth without any embarrassment at all and then yell at pedestrians on the sidewalk, maybe at your children. Everywhere, at every intersection, there are beggars. It's what we used to imagine India was like, but this is not Calcutta. This is New York and San Francisco and Austin, Texas. So the question is, what happened? And the short answer is, our leaders did this. No matter what they tell you, homelessness is not an act of God. It's not the result of economic collapse in this country. America did not run out of housing. Instead, a determined group of well-funded ideologues decided to make it easier to live on the streets in this country while doing drugs. Therefore, many more people now live on the streets while doing drugs.
Let's just...
Wait, they made it easier for people to live on the streets while doing drugs? Wait, what?
Well, I mean,
is that an easy situation?
Yeah, if you want to go into those spaces, we can also, I mean, let's try something different with that.
Okay.
Because when he's talking about a small group of ideologues, he's talking about, when we have small group of ideologues, we're talking about individuals who are more progressively and liberally minded and are likely very ethnically diverse, seeking to help indigent populations. But he's saying those people, I think he's talking about us. Those people made it easier for people to do drugs. Now, mind you, like, never mind the time that I spent in addiction work, addiction recovery work, and how the issues that he's talking about or the claims that he's making are not what people who are struggling through addiction and recovery are necessarily saying, like, whoo, I'm so glad those liberals made it so easy for me to be out here just cooking my meth. You know, it's not
exactly
like that wasn't the case. there were other issues. Let's just see. I'm just gonna try to just type this in. Let's type. We got that. I'm not looking for Ciara. I'm just looking for CIA, and I'm looking for this. Watch this. Oh no. Let's see.
What?
Ooh, we got. Let's see what this one has to say. Okay. Oh, this is from the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs itself. Let's see what M. Levine and L. Cavano Levine have to say. This was back from '93. This book, written by a former undercover agent working for the DEA, charges that the Central Intelligence Agency and other U.S. federal agencies are perpetuating the scourge of drugs on American streets while they profess to be fighting the war on drugs. This is someone from the fucking DEA saying that, and folks, I don't know what to do. This is up here saying it's an official website of the United States government, Department of Justice. This isn't Fox News. This isn't some random conspiracy site that is cooking up all sorts of craziness. Folks, we don't have to look for conspiracies. These charges exist in 480-page lengths by people who worked formerly as undercover DEA agents. So, Tucker, let's get the story straight, bro. It isn't about what you're, or it is about what you're suggesting. You've got the wrong players in place. Like, yes, this has existed. Yes, we're seeing this because of a generation of people who have been just, beware the pusher. But what happens when the pusher is your government, right? Here, take this. Why are we giving this out into communities? Nadine, why do you think the CIA might proliferate the use of a highly addictive substance within a Black American population? Why do you think that would happen? We have prison slavery. We have slavery that's been, we can do it that way. We can do school to prison pipeline, so we can keep the Black people in slave states. What else can we do? Well, if we take away their means of livelihood and really reduce Black people down to a place where they are addicts whose highest priority is to seek the thing that is neurologically now programmed as their most powerful driver, rather than family, rather than their children, rather than a very nice, kind of a very, very like a pride in their existence, right? What then happens? What happens to those people? They end up being B-roll clips on Tucker Carlson's program. Doesn't that sound insidious?
It is insidious.
That sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
And
when you were saying that, it's just like it's kind of hard to resist thinking like, why would they like funnel a highly addictive substance out, to us? We're like their favorite, and I hate to say it in that way, but listen, let me just be very clear. From my perspective, I see it exactly for what it is. So I'm just saying it like that. I feel like the favorite, experiment, like science experiment type thing. You know what I mean? Like that is why I have a fear of, it's difficult for me to trust. You know what I mean? Sometimes things that are healthy for me because of things like this. Like why is it that something that's not funny or a joke ends up being a joke on someone's, and winds up being how someone points to say, see what the problem is, and rearranges some facts with just literally your opinion.
Yeah. Not necessarily just an opinion, but possibly an agenda, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's this idea, right? There's been this whole Make America Great Again thing that happened with Trump. There's MAGA, Make America Great Again. And a lot of people cynically say, well, you want to make America white again. You want everything to be like the 1950s, post-World War II, pre-civil rights, that beautiful little sandwich time where, all those Black people knew exactly what they need to do, and white people were able to do what they needed to do. We didn't even worry about the Asians and the Indians, right? So we won't even worry about that. But here's the weird thing, because history is weird like that, right? Look at this article right here. Look at this article right here. The $1 trillion African-American consumer market, economic empowerment or economic dependency. Now, here's another thing, right? We're going to look to what we're due, World War I, Great Migration, Ebony Magazine in 45, Montgomery, like this is, where are we getting to? Significantly, while mid-20th century American businesses began to recognize the importance of Black dollars, African Americans themselves began to recognize how they could use their collective net income to bring about the dismantling of American apartheid, right? And apartheid as it exists in South Africa, reflecting on it here in the same way. This kind of this separation in terms of economic disenfranchisement and social disenfranchisement of African Americans. In fact, disciplined African American spending represented the cornerstone of the period's evolving civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, and it's so uncommonly spoken of, was as one of its driving, foundational pillars and driving agendas was using economic power to control, or to not control, but impact the direction of social, cultural, and political, outcomes for Black Americans. And that's happening here. And I wonder if there's like, I want to look at something else. Let's see if this might have some. Oh yeah, this might have what we're looking for. This is the consumer era. Oh look, consumer era with a big old white Colonel Sanders. That's not necessarily. Look at that. That's fantastic. We're looking at something that's probably depicting the racist aspects of this, but I'm not necessarily looking just for that. I'm looking for. Yeah, so this is more of what I'm looking for, right? As these things began, like, let's see if we can take it with a sense of, okay, so we're gonna begin slowly, right? We have, this is how African-American individuals, let's see if I can open this image in a new tab. So it's super small, but you can see it, right? Like, this is how African-American individuals were depicted in media in the 1960s as a growing consumer base. That's why they were cared about. Like, oh, well, Black Americans are doing well for themselves. They're starting to achieve middle class and higher status. And so we're going to depict them this way, and we're going to sell to them, right? So it began that way, and then it started to go into different places. So let's see where it went to. It went into over here. This is probably 10 years, further down the line. We're starting to have more depictions that it's not just everybody's in a store. Now it's, here's black and white complexion powder, and we're going to address certain types of Black issues, and we're going to do it that way. Then we're going to, use African American, imagery in our particular, so we're going to cater to needs that are specifically needs that Black individuals may have cosmetically, in terms of, a personal use, whatever the case is. But we're also going to generalize that and say, well, Colgate, it's not just for white teeth, it's for Black teeth as well, right? So we're going to do that. And then we start moving into places where, we have this kind of thing, Schlitz beer, move on up, let's have some of this. And we're drinking out of regular cans in a beautiful old backyard while we're, planting a tree. Look at that, we're planting a tree and we're drinking out of that, right? So we have that. And then we start going to this. What?
Real and rich and cool?
Yeah.
What the hell is that? Oh, a cigarette?
Yeah. But we also have that, but we have this too.
A burger.
It's gonna be doing
Fast food.
it. Do it like Black people like. Get down with a cheeseburger at McDonald's. Get down with something good at McDonald's. Right? So then we started having exploitative as we're moving into the 70s.
Do you know?
Yes, tell me.
So, do you know what Newports are called and amongst some people in the Black community?
What are they called amongst some people in the Black community?
I will not say the word, but the blank killer, the N killer, like
N-word
literally.
killer?
Yes.
Oh,
That's
I'm sure
like,
that works with the N-word with the hard ER at the end.
No. I mean, like Black people say it, honestly. But as like, and even like I, used to partake or whatever, and it was just like as we're smoking the cigarettes and like, oh shit. Like, it really wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. It was like horrible. But like seeing this is like, you know what I mean? Like, when a thing is known, but it's just like the addiction is so strong that like,
Damn.
Yeah.
So now you're getting the understanding of what happened in the 80s with all these allegations relative to the CIA and the involvement in basically enslaving Black Americans to something that is we have Newports and crack. Some people may argue that the Newports are more addictive and more damaging than crack was in its highest, kind of moment. So let's see. Let's go back. Now that we have some context for how this stuff has been done, let's go back and see what Tucker has to say.
See? Not complicated. In 2005, an unemployed alcoholic called Basil Humphrey enrolled in a rehab program in Boise, Idaho. When Humphrey refused to stop drinking, the rescue mission kicked him out. Those were the rules, and he spent months sleeping outside, as so many do. Eventually, local authorities ticketed him for camping on public property. That was the law. The story would have ended there, except that a huge corporate law firm in New York City called Latham & Watkins took an interest in the case on the other side of the country. Now, typically, Latham & Watkins represents Wall Street banks and prominent Democratic office holders. But the firm wanted to change vagrancy laws to increase homelessness. Why did they want that? We don't know. But the firm filed a lawsuit on Basil Humphrey's behalf against the city of Boise. That suit made it to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. In 2018, the court declared that cities have no right to criminalize homelessness. In fact, the court ruled cities have an obligation to provide free housing to the homeless at public expense. The Supreme Court later upheld that ruling. The case was known as Martin versus Boise, and it had exactly the effect that Latham & Watkins intended. City officials across the country no longer had an obligation to protect the public and public spaces from drug addicts who decided to live in them.
All right, so we have accusations being thrown everywhere. We have suggestions being made. We have lamentations that we are not in a position to criminalize houselessness, right? To criminalize the results of houselessness, which are human beings who are so displaced that they have no place to belong, they have no place to go, right? I mean, should we round them up and put them on an island somewhere? I think that's what people did with Australia. That's what the British Empire did with Australia. It put all criminals on the land mass of Australia. Should we do that with houseless individuals as well? Right? It's a really, and you know, it's funny, in Tucker's broadcast, all those first images of houseless individuals, you know, there are white houseless individuals too, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
And other types of houseless individuals, like it's fairly reflective.
He's bold, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's all just black houseless individuals. Let's see now.
Look at the needles that are like just like manufactured crisis, and he's just got like different, you know, tents.
It is time for it to come to an end.
Chaos.
Right. So let me just do something here just so I can have it at the ready. But let's see what
Chantel, you're out here homeless in Gainesville.
okay, this is Chantel. We got Tucker. Let's just see what this individual has to say here. This is the author of a new book called San Francisco. This was posted earlier this year, just in mid-January. So let's see what this guy has to say.
It is time for it to come to an end.
Chaos is the word I think many people in San Francisco would use to describe the situation.
Its homelessness problem has been out of control for years, but COVID made it even worse.
Is shoplifting happening every single day?
Every single day, anytime they want.
Residents here are mortified. We're beyond wit's end.
It comes to an end when we take the steps to be more aggressive with law enforcement and less tolerant of all the bullshit that has destroyed our city.
On December 17th, 2021, San Francisco Mayor London Breed declared a state of emergency in the city's Tenderloin district, which will lead to an increased police presence in the epicenter of the city's growing homelessness and addiction crisis. It was a major turnaround for Breed, who after the murder of George Floyd in 2020 called for ending the use of police in responding to non-criminal activity. And she was roundly criticized by progressive politicians and groups like the Coalition on Homelessness, who called the move an expansion of strategies that have been tried and failed that would contribute to the instability and poor public health outcomes of people living on the streets. Michael Schellenberger, author of the new book San Francisco: Why Progressives Ruin Cities, calls Breed's new tough love approach a big step in the right direction. The homelessness crisis, he says, is actually an addiction and mental health crisis enabled by progressive policies that permit open-air drug scenes on public property, prevent police from enforcing crimes, and undermine the creation of a functional mental health system. Reason spoke with Schellenberger, a Bay Area activist best known for his advocacy of nuclear power, about his foray into social policy, his critiques of both progressive and libertarian politics, Mayor Breed's new approach, and how he thinks America's big cities can clean up their streets without grossly violating civil liberties. So your new book is San Francisco: Why Progressives Ruin Cities. First off, could we talk about the title for a second? It's a little aggressive, no? Aren't you worried about scaring off potentially persuadable people?
I do worry about that. I don't want to scare off anybody, but I also believe in truth in advertising, and the title is accurate. You know, the basic argument of the book is that San Francisco and other liberal cities are sick. They have people with untreated mental illness and untreated addiction, camping in parks, on sidewalks, using drugs publicly, defecating publicly. It's a huge public health problem. And I don't just mean homelessness, I also mean the broader, urban decay, and including rising crime. I also think, I also argue that there's a kind of sick way of thinking about these problems, which is to pathologize and to view the world as, and to view our system as, fundamentally evil and wrong, and that leads to terrible outcomes. You know, the book is not, it is about.
See, you get what he's saying?
So
he's beginning with this idea that it is liberal policies, right? Liberal policies meaning to not do what the mayor has recently done, which is to increase police presence, to say we're not putting up with this bullshit anymore, to say, you know, we need to crack down, tough love, stuff like that. He's like, good job, mayor, because what's led to this is a more humanistic approach to houselessness, right? And it's not to criminalize, it's not to demonize, not to do that. And he's saying we shouldn't pathologize houselessness. And what that is being referred to in that particular space, we shouldn't make houselessness an issue that is something that can be seen as, if it's seen as a pathology, it's seen as a human difficulty, then it can be seen from the lens or through the lens of trauma. I mean, he's using mental health and addiction, but he's saying, like, let's address mental health and addiction. He's just passing the buck at that point. Let's not address the socioeconomic issues that lead to this particular situation, right? And the policies that are in place for that. Let's just pass it off to mental health and addiction stuff, but that's not funded well either, to actually address mental health and addiction issues. So he's just saying, no, this isn't a problem of that. This is a problem of we're just too loose about all this. We need to like shape it up, which is the cops rolling by and being like, you know, with KKK hoods and saying, move it along. So he is saying, good job, Gainesville, for hiring Excelsior Defense. That's the name of the houselessness solution, Excelsior Defense, right? Let's go ahead and just do this real quick before we move forward, because spelling it correctly, but this is here. Let's see what Excelsior Defense is about. Providing excellence in everything we do. Rest assured, no matter which security service we provide, you are secure. This is the patch, the special force, your solution, right? Excelsior Defense Incorporated specializes in supplying uniformed security officers to protect the interests of state and federal governments, businesses, industries, and even residential communities. So if you feel there's too many Black people coming around your community, you hire Excelsior Defense, and they'll make sure in places like Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. What's common to all of those states? Which side of the war were they on during the Civil War? And this N-word control group is the idea for what we're going for over here. Why Excelsior Defense? Oh, we got a lot of stuff. Issuance of trespass and property violations. How the fuck does a private organization issue trespass and property violations to the homeless people that were saying to move along?
Well, they're special police.
Yeah. I don't want to go all like, remember, you know,
right there,
Germany in the 40s, but special police. Okay, let's take a look over here. Let's take a look at something. So we have Gestapo. Let's look at some images. We got images here. We got a lot of images here. You know, we got that image right there. Right. Well, let's just see what the Gestapo looked like, right? So we have the secret state police. right? And they had lots of different imagery as well. But I don't know. I don't want to go too deep into this kind of thing because people are always like everything is like Hitler, you know. But it's really incredibly fascistic here. This is a fascist move to do this particular thing, and that is what this dude is talking about here.
San Francisco, but it's also really about what the subtitle says, which is why progressives ruin cities. It was a question I had, and still am asking.
Progressives ruin cities because they don't hire Excelsior Defense to take care of their shit.
You know, I don't know. It's like I feel like I see a theme here, like from both sides, and like you know, progressives ruining cities, and like the houseless people we see are ruining cities, and like, you know, like, but I see, and I from my experience, like with houselessness myself, yes, first and foremost, it's one thing when you experience it, you are literally your entire life. Like before I could make any decisions for myself, I experienced houselessness, you know. So that is something that does, you know, it takes, it took me a long time to be able to even just maintain housing, like a long damn time. And I was never not working on that when I didn't have it. But you know, beyond just that, like beyond that reasoning as well, there were times like when I did have, you know, a choice, and I didn't, like, I realized the choices that I had were shit. Like I couldn't actually grow and develop in the way that was healthy and authentic to myself and good for my family. That choice wasn't on the list a lot, whether it was the private sector, like with family helping, or you know, or friends sometimes, or whether it was like, you know, public sector, which is like, you know, just governmental like assistance, or even like charities, you know, assistance. Like a lot of times just my option was not there, because there's no, like, it's like you have to fit in with the whole thing of like society, honestly. But like, you know, in the cities with us, you know, ruining cities and like ruining society. And the thing is that I feel like society's ruining life. You know what I mean? The way it is now, there needs to be, it doesn't like, not just like blow everything up and flatten everything. And that's not what needs to happen, but like, it can't be the stiff box that everyone is supposed to fit in. This makes people crazy to try and be like, everybody's got to fit in this. Everybody's got to do boop, 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 boop. This is how we do. This is a problem. It makes people sick. It made me very sick. I'm still getting over the illness of, you know, having to try and fit myself, my shape into this, when like, that's not, you know, we can't, that you're gonna make people, this is what I'm seeing, is like just that sickness. And like, that's why people are looking for community outside of this, that stifles and just restricts you, you know, keeps you from growing. So if that's what he's saying when he's saying that progressives are ruining cities, then sure, I guess you can look at it that way.
Yeah. He isn't, though he wrote an entire book saying or providing the nuance of a view like that in as eloquent a way as you just did. He's not doing that. He's basically saying this is something that we need to, you know, it's tough on crime. We got to be tough on crime, and houselessness is a crime. I mean, that's basically.
Oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah. So let's take a look and see, you know, how some, you know, so this is explaining houselessness from American Planning Association, journal of that. I mean, so some of these articles I'm pulling up are from some time ago because it is important to see how this issue historically developed, right? As a problem of homelessness intensifies in the United States. Is this from 1988 or is it from 2022? Because It's the same context. The search for solutions becomes increasingly urgent. This article presents an explanation of the origins of the current crisis of homelessness. So let's go ahead and see, right? We have dimensions of homelessness. Let's see what this has to say. Robertson, Ropers, and Boyer define homelessness simply as the absence of a stable residence, which is why it's called houselessness, not homelessness, of a place where one can sleep and receive mail. That's houseless.
Yeah.
People find homes in many different ways, right? But listen to how, this is discussed. The fact that the homeless population is notoriously fugitive, right? It's like they're notoriously people who are trying to run from something, run away from things. That text right there, it compounds the problems of defining homelessness. Different dimensional and enumeration strategies have produced widely varied estimates, blah, blah, blah. It's leaning towards a criminalization of houselessness, right? So that's how that was initially perceived. And we see, is homelessness a criminogenic situation, right? Let's look and see crime and leaving home. Traditionally, researchers refer to the experiences of adolescents who flee their homes as the running episode, or those events which accompany running away. Alternatively, our research suggests that it may be more appropriate to think of these experiences as part of living on the street or homelessness. So they're looking at it from the idea that you were just speaking of, Nadine, that you've been in a place of being traditionally houseless on and off, and that fed into your view of seeing what living and livelihood should be like. This idea of lengthy homeless episodes, lengthy episodes of houselessness. But
I'm sorry, it's not funny.
The idea
it's funny to think of. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, not opening up the concept that there are individuals who become houseless in their adulthood, like first-time houselessness. That occurs in adulthood, right? And let's see. I want to come to an idea of this, right? Spatial identity. There are now many interpretations of built form as the representation of identity in space. Complexities in the field have expanded as important differences are shown to occur across cultures, right? The debate of individualistic versus social interpretations of house identity is both rife and productive. So what they're getting at that particular point is we're not just looking at adolescents who move into a lifetime of houselessness because of their running phase when they were young. We're talking about people who have different identities of home in terms of how they occupy space, in terms of what they consider theirs and their needs. Now, there may be houseless individuals that you see walking with 2 full grocery carts full of stuff, and there may be a houseless individual that is walking with a backpack, right? There's variation in those spaces as well. But what we're talking about is a much more complex social identity problem we're getting at here, rather than just this person is homeless because they were always homeless, because they do drugs and they're addicts and they've just blown their life away. It's because they've alienated their family and no one wants them around. They're fugitives, they're criminal, they're in and out of prison, so that yes, many of those things exist, but being in and out of prison and not finding a way to establish identity within this society and community is not that different from veterans who don't necessarily have an ability to stabilize their life. 2 very different populations of individuals, but who end up in a similar state. That's not as simple as saying criminalize. Are you going to criminalize veterans at that point? Right? Like, this is what we're moving into, and that's why this is just going to be, what do you think, Nadine? This kind of has to be a series, right, that we're going to do here. It's too simple to just do it.
It's too much for one.
Yeah, it's too much for right now. But yeah, we have to get into some very much deeper ideas of what we're looking for here, right? So we have social dialectics, right? How you're perceived there, but spatial dialectics relative to home are very, very varied, right? And this is like a flattened out, 30,000 foot view that's similar to Maslow's hierarchy as it builds from the ground up, right? So, let's just think about what we've approached today. Why don't you, what are some of the things that have, like, let's reflect a little bit on what's popped up, because I think we got to build this into the next time we come together and go into some depth based on the strands we've arrived at, but just as kind of like getting our feet wet in this situation, just like we did with critical race theory the other day. Like, how does this sit with you? How do people's perceptions from either side? We haven't necessarily, we've seen some perceptions from, we've seen some pretty draconian and fascistic perceptions so far, but how are things sitting with you here, including with Crystal's view on how things look from the ground?
It's difficult, I think, to hear people talk in a way that sounds like they're just disgusted with, like, this homelessness problem, like, it's gross. And I think that reaction is pretty gross. Like, when I hear Crystal's story, or when I hear Robert's story, or any, like, one else that I've talked to, or when I think about my own story, and especially now to think of how someone perceiving me, now, and perceiving me when I was in a very similar position, to some of the people that we've seen today and heard from, and some people that we know. Like, I've been homeless, like, definitely. It's been, and to think of, like, how I may be kind of given a pass often, like, oh, but yeah, if someone, say, if I'm having this conversation with someone, oh, but yeah, but you, this and that, and the kids, and you used to have a husband, and now, you don't, so you're a single mom now, but it's just like, I hate that. It's not that I don't want consideration for, like, the things that happen in my life, but I don't think I'm the only one I don't think that should be a special thing that you reserve for people that you like. So you're like, well, I don't want you to feel bad about yourself, So
you're saying that the past is something that people who may have worked with you, they may be allies, right? That are working with you in community, and they explain away your struggles with houselessness as, issues of abandonment, from spousal abandonment, issues of being a single mother, and issues of being a Black woman. Issues, mind you, the issue of being a Black woman, right? Not just this is who I am, right? But that particular idea, and it doesn't cover, or doesn't really get into, even in a conversational space, the incredible complexity of everything that happened longitudinally as well, over time. But also in recent times, or also in a particular time where that episode of houselessness occurred, and how the people you're speaking with and you do not share the same safety mechanisms, or you just may not have had safety mechanisms where they do have safety mechanisms, whether in terms of personal, like, financial security, or familial financial security, or community-based, or whatever the case is. So do you want to, is that what you're saying? You want to have a deeper conversation?
Yeah, I think it's necessary. Definitely,
Yeah.
it has to be a deeper conversation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I don't want there to be a brushing over of like the if someone has an opinion that is like, you know, kind of hardened, you know, or like, you know, like, well, no, this is just how it is, it's laziness, or it's, you know, there is some way that, you know, a person without a house, you know, can like go and get themselves in a position to be able to maintain like how things are how we live in society. And like I don't if that's your opinion, I don't want to be the exception, you know, like let's just really talk from that place, because I have thoughts on that, definitely. Like I can tell you, like I just said earlier, you know, about times that I did make a choice, like, no, I can't go this way, because it was like I was left to maintain. And when it was all said and done, I was the one that had to maintain this life. You know what I mean? I have to keep it going. You know, I have to keep my house running. I have to keep, you know, I have to look out for my children and care for them, raise them. And I couldn't do it in the way that there were a lot of different ways that I couldn't do it in the ways that I was being asked to do it. That wasn't a real thing for me. And to be healthy and to raise healthy, you know, children, like I had to think outside of that box, and I had to find what really worked for me to create health in my home. Even before I had a home.
And often, as we're about to see with our friend, so this is our friend from Universal Frequencies, awesome channel, awesome dude, and a view on the unexpected. You know, the speaking to this issue that we need to have, we all need to have the opportunity to freely construct our realities, right? And there are some ways that are, let's say, of you as you were speaking, or of him or of me. I mean, there's ways that are expected. We all end up in boxes culturally with how we've grown up, with what's been placed on us. And yet there are, if in any way you don't fit in with the dominant social hegemonic perception on how things should be, it often means that you have to lose a lot, right? I mean, I have lost revenue, I have lost earnings, I have lost social status, I have lost people that just don't get the choices that I've made, and they see those choices as being foolhardy in terms of not staying within a particular trajectory that I've been trained for, that I have professional expertise in, and that I've also had a background leading up into this space. But again, like you, like him, there's something wrong that I perceive with that way of being. And so I want to deal in a different way, but dealing in that different way just means, well, sorry, bud, that means you're doing it the wrong way, right? And that's the problem that we're also bringing up here, that there are people who seek autonomy, who seek individual expression in ways that are non-prescriptive. But if it goes against the grain, so to speak, goes against the social norm, I mean, then, you know, there's the path of losing, as they say, you know, as is something that's emerging in China, that you have like a social credit score. So there's literally a number that tells you how awesome of a person you are and how much you get to do in society, like travel or go out to eat or any of those things. So that's like a heavy control mechanism there. But, you know, we have a very unspoken control mechanism here in that capacity. So let's listen to our boy here and see what he has to say about some of what we're talking about.
Peace, quick live, think fast. Being in that houseless transition, you know, on that sole purpose and that pursuit of happiness, whatever, you know, quote unquote, but going through that temporary houselessness, you know what I'm saying, what a lot of y'all call homeless, but going through that temporary houselessness, it's almost like an entrepreneur's retreat. And I thought about it like when I like see like a lot of the people that that I have synchronized experiences and end up running into and things of this nature. Like in the back of my head, I'd be like, you ever came across somebody and like knew that, all right, this person gonna invent something popular or famous. I don't know what it is, but this person gonna do this. Whatever this person working on, they gonna be great at that, you know what I'm saying? But from being at Starbucks, because Starbucks is basically like a entrepreneur meeting place. Like I tell anybody, matter of fact, that should be like a rule. Like if you're an entrepreneur and you working or whatever, if you ever in a Starbucks, man, speak and talk to people, socialize, man. You don't never know who's sitting in Starbucks, who you know, because that's the thing, y'all all vibrating on the same frequency, so that's why y'all in these same places. And that's what you have to remember too, as far as like when you're on course to doing something or accomplishing something, then you on a certain vibration. So you gotta realize, like some of them times when you're not thinking to socialize with people, but you gotta realize if you're on a certain mission, hey, if somebody kind of provoke you to speak to them or something like that, that's what's trying to nudge you, just, you know, to build a rapport and talk, you know, because again, the vibration that you're on is around you, you know what I'm saying? But I thought about how it is like a little retreat. In fact, the other morning I woke up out of my little spot and you know, saw a brethren laying on the next little bench. It's almost just like a little retreat, like a little jose or something, so to speak. You know, I don't like using that terminology. But like where I was like, bro, you know, you don't need no water or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like offering, you know, knowing. And I told him that because I know I see it, because I could feel that, you know, the vibe of like some people are gonna be, you know, houseless by choice or default forever in this lifetime, but some of us again doing it temporarily to get to something, you know, to something more fulfilling to our soul, you know. And I could
first of all, I'd rather listen to him than paying to go to a Tony Robbins retreat any day. You know, like this guy is amazing. And
Yeah.
think about everything that he has. You guys should definitely go check out his channel, right?
Oh my God.
A lot of stuff there. Really cool jewelry too on his Insta. It's called Epic Lifestyles, right? So it's really cool. Go check him out. But the idea, and you know, links to contact, you know, all that stuff's going to be in the description below. But just the idea of saying, you know, I'm temporarily houseless as I'm working towards something. I mean, think about between him and Crystal, right? How different are these individuals from what Tucker Carlson or Michael Schellenberger were just talking about in terms of, you know, these drug addicts, and these are people who just, they're screaming and they're taking up everything. And this guy's talking about, he just woke up, he says, brethren, on the bench next to me, and I offered him some water and to see what he's doing, what he's, you know, feeling. And while I'm on my journey to move through this space, even as it might be temporary, to build into something else, like people want to build, folks. This is not a lazy homeless person. This guy has 29.9 thousand subscribers. Right?
Yeah.
Like, hey man, can we be a part of your community and like get in on your subscriber base? And you've got he's an entrepreneur with his jewelry. Imagine if he had a universal basic income, housing, food security, health security. Boop, boop, boop. Imagine he had that. He'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm at Starbucks every day getting like, you know, like talking with people, building rapport, building relationships. Most of the
Networking.
people at Starbucks are actually full of shit. They have money, they have money to be there and sit there and keep buying shit. And they're like, I'm working on something. And it's like, come on, bro. Like no one's looking at, no one cares about the veracity of what they're actually doing as long as they keep being consumers at Starbucks. This guy's actually doing something. And imagine him having a baseline to operate from. Like where he could be at this point. I don't know. I think this is a hugely complex issue, and the complexity isn't going to go away with some singular solution. That's not going to happen in that way. But what we're seeing is that the issue is something that has to be discussed with greater nuance or recognition of all the nuances present. And in order for that recognition to occur, we have to definitely exist on a more qualitative or in a more qualitative space with people. Like you and I are planning to do with houseless community members here, like he's doing where he is. There's other people that we're going to be talking about doing this work, like Invisible People is doing on their site.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's very much relative to the needs of individuals. And if you hear what those needs are, you're not going to be like this dude making one blanket statement. Like they're saying that, you know, he may say that the issues are complex, but they're not relative to, you know, what he's saying. He's feeling great, Michael Shellenberger, about what the mayor of San Francisco faces crime surge fueled by COVID. Listen to this, fueled by COVID, poverty, mental illness, homelessness, and public policy changes.
I'm back.
Yeah, poverty.
And we're back.
All right. Yeah, no, don't worry about it. We're just going to keep going here. So, you know, these issues of poverty, mental illness, and homelessness are not issues that are necessarily something that fuels crime. That's a very, you know, kind of difficult statement to make, that poverty fuels crime, mental illness fuels crime, homelessness fuels crime, but that's what's being placed on CNN. Let's see what this mayor, because I think you missed that first when we were looking at it. Let's see what this mayor of San Francisco is saying, what Michael Shellenberger is feeling really happy about, that she's taking this stance so that she can clean up his city, right?
This problem has been out of control for years, but COVID made it even worse.
Is shoplifting happening every single day?
Every single day, anytime they want. Residents here are mortified. We're beyond wit's end.
It comes to an end when we take the steps to be more aggressive with law enforcement and less tolerant of all the bullshit that has destroyed our city.
On December 17th, 2021, San Francisco Mayor London Breed declared a state of emergency in the city's Tenderloin district, which will lead to an increased police presence in the epicenter of the city's growing homelessness and addiction crisis. It was a major turnaround.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely missed it. I completely, because I got like excited when I heard that the last time, because I thought she was saying to be more, I missed very key things there. I'm sorry, but like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it?
That's fucking horrible.
A woman.
What a letdown.
Leader of color.
I was about to say a brown people. Like what?
Yeah. Yeah, so she opted to go with Excelsior Defense. So, all right. I think what we'll do is set this here. This is where this is the solution for homelessness right here, folks. Excelsior Defense. We're gonna leave this here, and we'll come back to this because I think there's more work to do in this particular space, and we might need to take a deeper dive with Community Dharma Exchange.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, folks. We will be getting there soon. ...